3 kilometers. That is how far the convoy made it. 23 vehicles, tanks at the front, APCs behind them carrying infantry, support trucks at the rear. The whole formation moved with the kind of weight that is supposed to make an enemy nervous. The low rumble of treads on cracked asphalt, exhaust smoke cutting into the morning air, a column built to punch through a defensive line and keep going. It never reached that line. By the time the lead tank entered a bend in the road near a tree line, the crew had probably studied on a map 100 times. Ukraine already knew where every vehicle was, how fast they were moving, and which one to hit first. The convoy entered Ukraine. Minutes later, it was gone. Not retreating, not regrouping, gone. As in a column of smoke markers stretched across 3 kilometers of eastern farmland, with Ukrainian drone operators uploading the footage before the wreckage had cooled. To understand why this keeps happening, you need to understand the theology Russia went to war with. The Soviet Union didn't just leave Russia a pile of old tanks. It left an entire industrial belief system built around armor. Born from the carnage of the Second World War and refined through 40 years of Cold War planning, the doctrine was straightforward. If you have enough steel moving fast enough in the same direction, you overwhelm almost anything. It worked at Kursk, it worked in Czechoslovakia, it worked in Afghanistan right up until it didn't, but nobody mentions that at Kremlin dinner parties. The reserve depots were the physical expression of that theology. Hundreds of storage sites across Russia holding rows of tanks, APCs, and IFVs under tarpaulins or just sitting openly in gravel yards, rusting in a patriotic sort of way. T-72s, T-80s, T-62s, even T-55s, a tank that entered service the same decade Stalin died and which, in 2024, has been observed being loaded onto rail cars bound for Ukraine. Whether that is a tribute to Soviet engineering longevity or evidence of a logistics crisis so severe that someone in Russian military supply is genuinely scraping a barrel that has been empty since the Berlin Wall came down, is diplomatically left as an exercise for the viewer. The point of all this stored armor was simple. Even after heavy losses, you could keep feeding the front. Battalions that burned through their T-80s could be handed T-72s. Units that lost APCs could get older IFVs. The machine would keep grinding. Russia entered Ukraine in February 2022, believing the grinding machine was still intact. Oryx, the open-source intelligence project that tracks confirmed losses from photos and videos, has recorded over 4,000 Russian tanks destroyed, damaged, or captured, over 13,000 armored vehicles of all types. The analysts running it stopped being surprised by the numbers long ago. They track Russian armor losses the way other people track train delays. Predictable, sad, and somehow always worse than yesterday. Here is how a Russian armored convoy is supposed to work. Tanks lead. Their job is to absorb the first contact and open a path. APCs follow, carrying infantry who will dismount once the tanks have made progress. Behind them come the support vehicles, the people whose job is to make sure the formation keeps moving no matter what happens at the front. From inside the vehicles, this feels like controlled power. The infantry and the APCs sit on metal benches doing that very specific thing soldiers do before contact, trying not to look as nervous as they are while avoiding eye contact with everyone else trying not to look nervous. From the air, it looks completely different. From the air, specifically from a Ukrainian reconnaissance UAV orbiting at several hundred meters, feeding a live stream to a tablet where an operator is sitting somewhere very much not on the convoy's route. It looks like a slow chain of expensive rectangles moving predictably through terrain that limits every choice available to them. Heavy armored vehicles cannot improvise. A T-72 weighing 45 tons needs roads, tracks, cleared ground. Ukrainian drone operators don't need to predict where the convoy is going. The terrain does it for them. The ambush doesn't begin when the shooting starts. It begins when the convoy leaves its staging area. A reconnaissance UAV picks up the formation early, sometimes while it's still assembling. The operator doesn't do anything dramatic, no announcement. They just watch. While that is happening, FPV drone teams, operating the fast, cheap, first-person view kamikaze drones that have become the most effective anti-armor weapon per unit cost in this war, are already moving into position. Not at the front of the route, at the choke point, the bend in the road, the gap through the tree line, the stretch where terrain forces vehicles into single file. They don't rush, they wait, the convoy comes to them. And then comes the moment moment the entire engagement is built around. The lead tank is not just the most armored vehicle in the column, it is the column's nervous system. Every vehicle behind it spaces off it, watches it, follows its decisions through terrain only the lead crew can directly see. When it moves confidently, the APC behind it closes the gap. When it slows, everything slows. When it stops, everything behind it is suddenly in the worst possible place. Compressed, slowed, on a narrow route with no room to maneuver, with a burning wreck blocking the only path forward. An FPV strike on the lead tank takes 3 to 5 seconds from lock-on. The drone comes low and fast, usually from the side or rear where the armor is thinner, and hits the engine compartment, fuel system, or ammunition storage, which is the version nobody inside wants to be present for. The fireball is, to use the technical phrasing favored by Ukrainian drone operators in their video captions, spectacular. The vehicles behind it now face a decision tree with no good options. Stopping means sitting in an open kill zone waiting for the fire to spread. Pushing around the wreck means leaving the road, which means ground that may be mined, soft enough to swallow a 45-ton vehicle, and watched by the same UAV that has been following the convoy since it left camp. Reversing exposes the rear armor to any FPV drones that stage behind the column and turns the back half of the formation into a Moscow traffic jam, but with higher stakes and considerably less honking. Meanwhile, the Russian radio net is doing what Russian radio nets apparently always do in these situations, generating a tremendous volume of conflicting orders, confusion, and very creative language. While the smoke visible from inside any vehicle is increasing faster than the useful information, this is when Ukrainian artillery enters the sequence. The reconnaissance UAV has been tracking everything. It knows where the formation compressed. It sends coordinates to artillery crews who are already prepped on this stretch of road because Ukrainian forward observers do not wait for things to happen before they prepare for things to happen. The first rounds don't need to be precise. A convoy that was spaced out and moving is now stationary and bunched. The target has made itself easier. Then the secondary FPV strikes come in. The tank that reversed is showing its rear. The APC that tried to cut off road is now moving slowly in soft ground. Ideal target presentation for an operator who has been waiting. The support truck that stopped further back because the driver could see the smoke and made the completely rational personal decision not to drive toward it is now sitting still in the open. Each drone doesn't need to kill everything. It needs to kill enough that the survivors can't make the situation better. And the UAV above is watching all of it, coordinating, feeding positions, turning a single ambush into a continuous collapse. What started as a formation advancing on a defensive position is now, 20 minutes later, a pattern of burning vehicles spread across 3 kilometers of road, with soldiers deciding whether running toward the tree line is safer than sheltering near the wreck they're currently crouching behind. The answer is no. The tree line is also being watched, so is the drainage ditch, so is the ruined building at the road edge, so is the patch of ground behind the burning APC that looked like reasonable cover from the ground and is completely visible from above. This is the part of the engagement that doesn't appear in Russian military briefings. The part where the combat loss is not just the vehicles, but the infantry who rode in those APCs and are now scattered across farmland, being hunted by machines the size of a small child that cost approximately $400 each. That is what brutal looks like in 2024. Not a last stand, not a fair fight. A convoy that entered Ukraine with its engines running, dismantled piece by piece before a single Ukrainian soldier showed his face. Here's the part of this story that Moscow genuinely does not want you to think about. The convoy described above is not a single incident. It is a pattern repeated so many times and filmed so many times and uploaded to so many Telegram channels that the compilation videos have developed their own genre conventions. The overhead shot of the lead vehicle hitting, the thermal imaging footage, the moment the column compresses before the artillery arrives. Regular viewers of this genre know the beats. Some of them have opinions about production quality. The Soviet reserve depots that were supposed to guarantee Russia could always keep feeding the front are changing. Satellite imagery of Russian armor sites that once showed long rows of vehicles now shows thinner lines, gaps, machines that look incomplete or stripped. The T-55s being loaded onto flat cars and sent toward the front are not there because they are the best available option. They are there because the better options are already burning somewhere in Zaporizhzhia or Donetsk. A tank in storage is not a tank. A T-62 with a degraded engine, missing armor components, and optics that last worked properly during a Soviet military exercise in 1987 is not a tank. It is a very large, very expensive, very visible object that Ukrainian drone operators will be genuinely enthusiastic to find on their screens. Russia's tactical response to the drone problem has not been to solve it. It has been to work around it in ways that show how serious it is. Motorcycles, ATVs, civilian cars. Russian infantry assaults increasingly use cheap, fast, light vehicles that are harder for FPV drones to engage cleanly than a stationary armored column. The tactical logic is real. A motorcycle moving fast across open ground is a harder target than a T-72 sitting in a compressed queue. Ukrainian operators have adapted. FPV drones can guide onto moving motorcycles, and the footage of this adaptation is not something the Russian general staff would choose to play at a press conference. The deeper problem is that motorcycles cannot replace what Armoured does. A T-72 can push through a defended position in a way that a man on an ATV cannot. Armor provides the protection that allows infantry to reach a defended line without being destroyed before they get there. Remove the armor, and Russian infantry is crossing open, drone-surveilled ground in vehicles offering approximately the same protection as a firmly expressed wish. Russian casualties from infantry-heavy assault tactics have been catastrophically high, which is not a sentence that appears in any Russian Ministry of Defense press release, but does appear in every serious battlefield assessment published since 2023. It doesn't mean Russia stops attacking. It has to attack to maintain initiative and justify the war domestically. It means the attacks change shape. Less protected, more costly, more visible, and the casualties that follow that shape change don't appear in Kremlin public messaging. The convoy that entered Ukraine and was gone in minutes was not an exception. It was Tuesday. The convoy never had a choice of routes. It had terrain, and the terrain had been mapped by people waiting for it to arrive. The kill chain Ukraine has built, reconnaissance UAV, FPV teams, pre-registered artillery, coordinated by tablet screens and Starlink, is fast, cheap, and brutally effective against exactly the kind of massed armored movement Russian doctrine was built around. Russia has not found a solution that works at scale. Electronic warfare can interfere with drone frequencies, and smoke reduces visibility in the short window before the UAV finds a new angle. Faster movement cuts exposure time, but pushes vehicles harder into the predictable lanes the terrain already creates. But none of these close the gap between a force moving through terrain where every choke point is known and a defense that has months of footage showing precisely where those choke points are and how to exploit them. The Soviet inheritance, the theology of mass armor, the storage depots, the industrial logic of fighting with more steel than the enemy, is being burned through one convoy at a time, not in a single catastrophic battle with a clean ending. In the grinding, repetitive, filmed from above attrition of formations that moved into terrain they couldn't hide in, toward a defensive line that already knew they were coming. 3 kilometers. That is how far the convoy made it. Every meter of it was watched. If you want more on how this war is actually being fought, the tactics, the technology, and the very creative ways both sides keep finding to make each other's equipment stop working, like and subscribe to War Vault.